Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. Let us dig into this text of the radical feminists. Helps us to see their philosophy, come up with rebuttals and solutions, and also to confront criticism. It's very important to be able to handle criticism in terms of relationships and what it means to be a woman. Let's begin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Like many young women, I spent most of my early years in relationships with men, apologizing for things that weren't my fault. I spent years trying to make up for the harm the world had done to men and boys I adored, and minimizing the harm it had done to me, hollowing myself out to make a home for those men in my heart. I felt like I owed them. I owed them my time, my care, my money, my body, and that didn't make me feel good. But it made me feel good. It didn't bring me pleasure, but it made me feel virtuous and worthy. I was a good and giving girlfriend, and therefore a good person. Most of the young women I have been close to who regularly date men have had experiences like mine, of bleeding themselves translucent, trying to bolster the men they have adored, because that's what love is meant to mean. Okay, so good and giving, she says. Now, let us examine what would she expect a man to do. He better be giving in the relationship. If you recall how many moms post on Instagram and men themselves doing housework, saying parenting is a two-person job, and explaining their relationship dynamics, you begin to note that each one is putting in a high amount of effort, right? The man gives his time, and so does the woman. It's really this coming together of effort, right? If you are overly giving and you feel like you're being bled out, your lifeblood is coming, then you restrain it. You can't overly give to men or anybody, because they'll take advantage of it. Just like a woman, if she doesn't do anything and the man does everything, she will eventually take advantage of him, which is what a lot of Jezebels do. They really glorify not cooking and cleaning, just spending money and adorning themselves. That's usually what they do. And then you'll have the more plainer woman who's simple, making good food, drinks from scratch, appetizers, desserts, making sure the children are well tended, but she maybe will have her hair in a bun, or, she has her favorite comfortable pajamas on instead of some fancy Victorian nighty-night gown. You see what I'm saying? Each person is gonna have to... This gym bag is in the way. Each person is going to have to do something. The man will bolster the woman, and she will bolster him too. Love is a complicated emotion. But what you do for love, it depends on what you have as a standard, right? And what you're getting back in return. What is it then that men as a cohort feel they are entitled to from women? I would argue that if I had a son, which I don't, but I hope to one day have one, inshallah, I would tell him, you're entitled to loyalty, exclusivity, you're entitled to affection, respect, dignity, honor, and intimacy, and that doesn't mean marital rape. It means that that you have a responsibility to make your wife bonded to you and desire you. and to treat her well and make her want you. And if she doesn't get any sense of pleasure from you and she despises you, you need to try to fix it. And if you can't, well, she's broken her side of the bargain. The only time I can see an excuse for intimacy is 2 years. So pregnancies could be difficult, especially if you have other children. Just the weight, like the later stages of pregnancy gets really heavy, uncomfortable. You don't sleep well. You're constantly going to the bathroom. And then obviously the first year of life can be quite tricky. And if the baby has medical complications and the mother is like barely holding on to her mental sanity, that's not the time to try to create some lust-filled scene. It's time to focus on the child, right? So there are things that men and women are entitled to. What are women supposed to owe to men? Well, not cheating, taking care of their health, at least being semi-attractive. Okay, if he likes a big, thick woman, then do you. But if he is more attracted to you when you're a bit more trim, try your best. Because I'll be honest, my husband has a bodybuilder body. I picked him because of his body, one of the main attributes, like a body like Hercules. If he became fat and a slob, oh boy, may Allah protect me. That would be a trial. He owes it to me for me to have something nice to look at. Okay, that's just the way it is. So, if I don't want a fat slob of a man, I cannot let myself plump up either. When you're pregnant and you're recovering, obviously, but I do believe you should slim down. When the child begins walking, it's easier to take them with the stroller. Everything the world at large refuses to provide. Everything the world at large refuses to provide. Now, the world doesn't have to provide you anything. Remember the hadith that said a person is only guaranteed shelter, bread, and water. Socialism and communism don't work, in my opinion. The world is pretty brutal for animals. If you watch these brutal safari videos, you can see how hyenas live, how lions live. There was a wildebeest who just gave birth, and then all of a sudden here comes, I think it was a leopard, snatches the baby and eats it, right as it was born. A horse that doesn't learn how to stand up right away and run is going to be eaten. How many animals have gone extinct? Look how humans treat the ocean. How many whales are dying? Come on, man. The earth doesn't owe anyone nothing. Society owes you, by the social contract, safety and security as best as possible. Right? So, you want the government to run itself efficiently, but you don't want to become a nanny state that's too intrusive. Basic emotional and physical care. So basic emotional care, you'd want there to be lots of mental health services available, but that's where you have to learn how to cope as a hermit, or you have to learn how to open up to the right people and having the resources to speak to the right ones, and also prayer. No one can really create mass amounts of programs where they help you with your emotions. Usually it's just you venting. So what you really need is a companion. And if you don't have that, you journal, or you pour your heart out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Physical care, I believe healthcare is a very important thing. Now, holistic healthcare that focuses on nutrition instead of trauma surgery, I think is an important distinction. America has trauma care. Really good at transplants, cutting legs off, stuff like that. But nutrition wise, just look at our supermarkets, what we feed our kids in school. gas station diets. A sense of wholeness, comfort, community, and understanding. So, wholeness, I think we are all like Swiss cheese, though. We all got a hole in us, so we can never really be whole. We start out that way, and then the earth afflicts us with trauma, and we must survive and keep going. You get too many holes, you sink like a ship. You gotta know how to patch yourself up. Because she advocates for the sexual promiscuity lifestyle. So it's ironic to me that she talks about wholeness when she hates heterosexual Christian marriages so much. So her encouraging sodomy and promiscuity, I don't really see that as a path to wholeness, but, you know. Comfort, well, that's... You can be content with some things, that's for sure. Good mattress. You're lucky if you have air conditioner, good heating. Clean carpets, you know, stuff that you can do to keep your abode, your little nest, comfortable. But too much comfort pollutes you. Not enough comfort really wears you out. So there's a balance, but the world cannot grant you comfort. Because too many of the beings, if you look around this planet, live in discomfort. Forests get on fire from idiots doing climate change terrorism. You have uncomfortableness in the workforce just because you have too many personalities coming together and clashing. So it's just not possible for the society to provide you with comfort or Earth in general. Community, that can come in a number of ways, right? So don't get lost in trying to find a community. Make your own tribe. That's better, I'd say. And understanding, no, you have to have that with your husband and your kids, and even then, they're not always going to stay. So, your own parents sometimes will misunderstand you. And just because someone understands you does not mean that they're going to support your decisions. That's something to be very well aware of. Sorry, this thing keeps going into my eye. I tied my bun, and it's like pulling on the garment. So you, essentially, don't get any type of understanding from Earth. Earth is a violent place. Pandora. Someone to notice when you're struggling. That's your mama's job. If you're like me, you don't have a mom. Your husband. If your husband doesn't notice, your children. If your children don't notice, the angels are recording your pain, and Allah will recompense you for every ailment that you've suffered, because in the hadith we're told that if you even suffer a thorn poking you, that'll be something that adds to the forgiveness of your sins. If you recall the hadith, look it up. I summarized it, but struggling is ordained for us. We'll be tested, so as long as we keep doing good and have patience and don't despise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we'll be rewarded. Love, care, and attention. See, why is it here? She just said above that she didn't want to bleed herself translucent for love, and that she doesn't think you owe men love in a relationship, yet here she wants love, care, and attention, she says. Okay. Yeah, lots of contradictory here. Because she got sad and pissed off that men wanted sex, child rearing, and domestic labor. And she did not like that. Remember the quote she gave us from Don Quixote, where Marcelo's speech said, "Heaven made me, you say, so lovely that my beauty makes you love me despite yourselves. And in return for the love you show me, you claim and even demand that I should be bound to love you." So here, she thinks it's wrong for men to want to be loved, but she herself says that the world fails to provide love. So she's her own problem. This is why it's so important to see her contradictions. And this is just within 2 pages. So you can see we're dealing with a very broken mind with not too much self-awareness. That the philosophy she's advocating for, she's quite a hypocrite. So women don't owe men love, but men and society owe women love. These are precisely the things that the neoliberal state refuses to provide or pay for. Okay, so the neoliberals. Okay, so she's speaking out against neoliberals, so she might be a modern Marxist. So, provide and pay for. You cannot pay for attention, you cannot pay for love, you cannot pay for a sense of wholeness, you cannot pay for comfort, you cannot pay for community. The only thing you can pay for is healthcare. And even in that, I still think that private institutions are better. When I went to the community clinics, they're horrible doctors. Absolutely terrible. My husband pays for private insurance. We can go to private doctor, way cleaner facilities, way more professional, way less crazy homeless drug addicts talking to themselves in the waiting rooms. Overall, much better. So with a nationalized healthcare system, you're going to be around all kinds of people who are burnt out and dried up. It's better than nothing, but you still got to have private insurance because they do a better job on average. And precisely the things that the all caps logic of misogyny suggests. Women owe men as their rent on this earth. So misogyny suggests women owe men as their rent on this earth. So she complains about what women owe men, and then she mocked how men hand wave about protection, provision, and having someone around to get lids off jars. So she mocks that men will protect and provide, yet she thinks that women don't even owe men children, basic house cleaning, or intimacy. So she wants, that's basically what your dad is supposed to do. So the difference between your dad and your husband is your dad takes care of you and you don't really have too many chores as a kid. He pays all the bills and that's his job to take care of you, right? But you can't live with your parents forever. So you go off with your husband. Now your husband obviously is not your dad, so he can have intimacy with you. And if he wants to have the joy of children and he chose you, that's a pretty good thing. A sign that a man likes you is that he wants to have kids with you. And no man wants to live in a pigsty. Decent men don't want to have a hoarder who leaves out plates of food on the carpet and dirty coffee mugs on the table, and you got dirty diapers not in the bin, and you got socks on the floor. Like, they don't want to live like that. And men who do live like that, they're usually very unclean with their genitals and will give you bladder infections, and they're not clean, and you shouldn't desire them because they're stinky and filthy and dirty. Those are the type of men who, if they were left to their own devices, the carpet would be black. They'd never wash their sheets and it'd have a bunch of stain on it. It would be disgusting. So a woman who's decent and has good personal hygiene doesn't want to live like a hobo. And to expect a man to pay for a maid, but you don't have to have intimacy with him or give him kids, that's really quite strange. You're just like a walking doll. And a doll that's going to expire because your looks are going to start to go after 30. Sure, you can pretend plastic surgery like Joanne Rivers till the very end, till it kills you. But I don't know very many men who they're going to tolerate for that long. One word for this sort of work is social reproduction. But it has been called many things. Often as a way of distinguishing it from real work done traditionally by men. it has often been called women's work. The philosopher Hannah Arendt, in her famous study, The Human Condition, calls it labor, distinguishing it from work and action, which she explains are the other categories and effort that constitute human life. Labor, according to Arendt, is ephemeral, the basic work of survival. So labor, she contends, is ephemeral, the basic work of survival, of being a creature in motion. Work is constructive and produces tangible, lasting results, making it the sort of work you are more likely to get paid a wage for. Action, the most rarefied, is the work of thinking about and constructing society and your place in it, relation to others, arts, politics, and storytelling. Work, I think of getting paid for that, but we often say a child is hard work. We're not getting paid for that as mamas. However, I get paid in non-fiat currency by having a husband who provides, and I get paid in memories with my children, right? Time is money, so I get time with my kids, so right? Labor, think about like when you go into labor and you birth your baby. That's hard work of survival. We say it's a labor of love. If labor is making dinner, work is making a table, and action is making your mark in the world. Arendt does not explicitly say which sort of work is better or more important, but it's clear that she spent most of her own life doing. Okay, so what's more important, the top of the table or the legs of the table? You need both in order to have the table. A man and a woman, they have to be together in order to create the family. So both of their work is important. I can't have a table with two legs. I can't have really a trusty table with one. I like a four-legged table. One of those goes out, becomes wobbly, we got a problem. We need both. What goes on top is upheld by the legs. If labor is making dinner, work is making a table, and action is making your mark on the world. Arendt does not explicitly say which is more important, but it's also clear what she spent most of her life doing. Only a mind like Arendt's could so deftly describe the major modes of human activity while almost entirely sidestepping the questions of profit and power, and who actually does these different kinds of work in society and who is enriched by it. What is largely lacking in Arendt's coy summary, as it is lacking in most political philosophy, is any acknowledgement of social reproduction as valuable work. Well, She's gonna go into the koofy stuff, the sweet and sour sniffles here. I don't really want to get into that on YouTube. So, let's go down. In recent years, the phrase emotional labor has passed into everyday use as a way to describe some of that work. Girlfriend work. The work of patching up the walking wounded of the modern economy. As women struggle to fill the gaps in social provision within relationships, they find themselves blamed for the promises late capitalism made to men and never intended to keep. They find themselves blamed for the humiliation of men. They find themselves blamed implicitly and or directly for men's lack of security, their lack of dignified and secure work, their frustration, their lack of power. Oh, because women, I think she's getting at how red pillars and the MGTOW guys and those kinds blame women in the workforce for low wages, but then they also blame immigrant men. So someone's always blaming somebody. It's either the bourgeoisie's fault, or it's immigrants' fault, or it's women's fault, or it's never their own fault, or just that they have shitty jobs. It's a combination as well of all, I would argue. They find themselves blamed for the humiliation of men, that women may be suffering of all these degradations, and more does not factor. Women were designed for humility, for suffering. I think all of us are designed for suffering, actually. Around the world today, untold millions of men are consumed by an awareness that they've been cheated, by the suspicion that they are entitled to more out of life than they've had. They're right, but the things they are entitled to are not supposed to come from women and girls. I felt when I was little that I could have a nice house with the dogs and a ranch and a husband, big car garage, vacations. You have these dreams. And then you find out like it's not possible. Not for everyone. I was way more of a Disney baby. Like hoping I was gonna get my Prince Charming. Gonna get like the castle, right? Huge home. That was like, oh, like you're waiting, like when's that rich guy gonna come and marry me, and we get to live in a big house and have horses. I was obsessed with horses. Didn't happen, you know. I mean, I got my family and stuff, but I don't live in a mansion. I don't have a horse. Only in Red Dead Redemption 2 do I have a horse. Not so long ago, straight marriage was a straightforward economic arrangement, one in which women's labor power and sexual services were provided in exchange for food, shelter, and protection, and an economy designed to keep women dependent on men. That is a good point. Seems like also the Islamic system as well. You can see how in like the most extreme circumstances of Islam, you see how a lot of men say like women should sacrifice having a job and only look for the dunya, but then they don't want to marry single moms and widows. They want them to just be kind of existing on a welfare system and just take zakat money. But also some say they only want virgin wives, so they want to be polygamous, but they don't want women with kids. They don't want the financial baggage, they call it. Well, one red pill Muslim even said being a stepdad is being a cuck. So they only want the young, childless virgins to be provided for under their roof in polygamous circles. Okay, so in a system like that, they argue women don't need college and they don't need jobs. So if you become a widow, you can just live off the government. So that doesn't exist, right? So women have to work. And in exchange for a man having a wife, yeah, he has to do the basic thing a husband would do, which is give food, shelter, and protect her, right? Which, I mean, who doesn't want food, shelter, and to be protected? But it is an exchange. And it is a curse on women, I think, at a certain point that you have to let somebody hump you in order to get that. But if you don't want that, then you have to go the career route. You have to work, right? So if you become less hormonal, like, that's why a nunnery is a really cool thing. Because women who don't want to have sex can go and be in a nunnery. However, celibacy isn't something like promoted for men. Like priests and nuns have to be celibate, can't have a family. Islam just requires you to only have sex within marriage. Not that you can't get married. And if you're not married, then you have to be chaste. You see what I'm saying? You know, but if you don't want to marry and you want to work so that you're not having someone hump you in exchange for basic necessities, well, then that's your choice. This assumption was the bedrock of the nuclear family, a way of organizing households into units of economic production. The great task of a woman's life was to be good enough to be owned by an acceptable man. This logic is taking a surprisingly long time to die. So, she wants the nuclear family to die. She just told you right there. So no straw manning. Okay, she just laid it out multiple times. Here she tells you again. So she mocks men protecting and providing for women. Okay. And she finds it degrading that men want to have a woman who gives them intimacy and children and a sense of purpose. There's in the cartoon Courage the Cowardly Dog, Eustace, there's an episode where there's a tree that grows and grants wishes. And it starts providing things that Muriel wants. And Eustace says, "Oh, but that's my job." Like, he gets jealous of the tree providing when he wants to be the provider. He's like this grumpy old grandpa who lives in the middle of nowhere. He's not a good farmer. But he provides for Muriel, who's a stay-at-home wife. Right? And she cooks. And she's jolly. And she's a nice lady. So he chops down the magical tree so that he can have his sense of purpose back. It's really deep when you think about it. It's really deep. Okay? And men do like to feel like they're needed and wanted. She just said that women should feel like they're needed and wanted and have a sense of community, but then she denies that men should have the same emotion but in a different expression. This is how you can see her wickedness in her heart. But I do understand where she's coming from in terms of women who you stay with somebody, you lose attraction over time. You're not your 20-year-old self. Like, if you got 5 kids, as a parent, you're just like tired. You're tired. And you're not this nympho, like, pornish, angelic being that's constantly thinking about humping your husband. And men, because they've watched so much pornography, they put this burden of sex on their wives. And it makes the woman hate the man. You know, it's like they're pushing her. As soon as she stops bleeding, you know, he gets to just hump her. And a lot of the time she's dry. She doesn't like it. It hurts when she pees after. She didn't get any satisfaction at all. And he finished, and now he's sleeping, and now she's in pain, has to go do ghusl, or if you're Muslim, right, but if you're not, you just go to bed, and he's snoring, and she's awake. It's a very common thing. A lot of women complain about it, and they get tired of it. That sex becomes a sort of curse for women later on that men just don't understand or care about. Some have argued that polygamy helps relieve women of that sexual burden. Other men have pointed out they just want their one wife, and as they get older, their testosterone lessens, and they're just not, they're not a horny 14-year-old boy. They're a 50-year-old man. But then there are young men who, they want that 50-year-old playboy guy who still thinks he's 20, right? So there's a balance, you know. There's so much to say about that topic, because I see what she's getting at. I do. You know, because it's true that a woman, sometimes for basic survival, she'll have to marry somebody. And when you have to have intimacy with someone you don't really like, it's nightmarish. The solution here for these feminists: create all-women compounds. See, a lot of this is bitching about the nuclear family. Do you see what she's doing? She's bitching about the nuclear family. She's not proposing that women create compounds. communistic or socialistic compounds where they can live and help each other. Do that. Lead by example. None of them want to, because it's all talk. It's all talk. If you really didn't want women to have intimacy with men and have kids and be emotionally available for their husbands, then you would create these sort of asexual, lesbian-like compounds. A refuge, your little mini utopia. But they haven't done it. And to be owned by an acceptable man, well, you definitely don't want to be in a relationship with a bum. That's for sure. Women's suffrage and the liberalization of divorce laws have not taken away the implication that love is the chief task of a woman's life, and marriage, a work contract in which she is both the employee and the product. Yeah, but I'd say that goes for both. My husband is my product. I bought something, I signed that contract. Provision and body. Alright? He works for me. Get it? Because I'm a stay-at-home wife. Goes to work for me. Bringing home that bread. Nice olive bread. Sourdough. We got some baguettes. Because he ain't bringing home bacon. Because this is a halal household. Instead of counting on a job for life. However, modern women must now be constantly hustling in the precarious market of bland, managed romance. Well. There's no pleasing this lady. I don't think this is the person you get marriage advice from, to be quite honest. I think she's highlighting the consciousness of the woke liberal feminists in the modern society, how they perceive the world. I don't think these types of ideas should be adopted. The nuclear family is essential. Okay, so she doesn't... I'd rather be dependent on an acceptable man. Like, who doesn't? Why wouldn't you want to have like a sober, handsome, fit, patient man? Like, that's acceptable. What do you want, a broke playboy who's got an STD? A whiny male feminist soy boy who eats, vegan meat? A beta cuck who lets you go out with boys and go to swingers parties? I don't think so. A man who works is acceptable. A man who provides is acceptable. If society has deemed a man unacceptable, you know you've done wrong by getting into that marriage contract. No one forces you to get married. Okay? You don't have to. If you want to work and deal with customer service every day, and you don't want to be home, relaxing, taking care of your kids, dealing with that stress, well, it's up to you. It's up to you. I, for one, love animals, but if I had to trade kids for a bank account, after a certain point, I would run out of things to do. Like in Squid Game, right? That's the whole premise. These people are in debt. They do terrible things for money. And the rich people, they had so much money that they paid for these games to watch people hurt themselves. When some people have so much money, it's about experiencing things. Look at Mark Zuckerberg when he went to... Like, he's been doing some interesting things. I wish he would become a vlogger. Because I would totally weird out on what someone with that kind of money is doing in their daily life. But he went to a blacksmith, I think, in Japan, and was trying to hammer something with an anvil. He goes around having these experiences, right? These tech guru guys are going to, like, the mountains of Tibet, and, like, boom, when they're praying on the mountain. They like to go on safari, right? Like, look over there, there's a leopard. the leopard is eating the gazelle, this is a great experience. And then they want to go all over the world to have experiences because they have all this money. And at a certain point, you've tasted everything and your tongue is just like, I'm tired. Like, look at, if I were to say to myself, what would I do with money? Separate from the charity stuff. Horseback riding, sushi, boba tea, iced vanilla lattes, some puppies. like look at that. And once I've done all that, then you're gonna be sitting there like, what do I do now? And that's when you get into like people doing weird pranks, and they become weird because they have money, but now they're bored. So now they gotta make up things to do. And a lot of men become super sexual deviants because now it's like, okay, I had this model, so now they gotta go the fetish route. Oh, I need a person with one leg. You know, that's how it goes. So there is a balance here. But I'm not really sure if she thinks she has solutions ready. Because for the most part, she's identifying problems in her text, but she's not really providing an alternative system. She just complains about Christianity, the nuclear family, and heterosexuality in marriage. So maybe later on in the text she will provide more examples, but until then we'll just have to ruminate on what comes in the next pages. We've gone pretty far into this text, and it's what I expected, but a bit more of than what I expected. So hopefully you learned something. Let me know what you think. And I'm fundraising for a book holder and a wooden panel, so if you want to contribute to that, since Ramadan's coming up, that'd be awesome. Take care. Till next time.